What's happening, guys? So we are back in today for legs. So as we've entered into prep, there's been a little bit of a change to the structure of my leg days. So today we're only going to be doing 4 exercises for legs and a total of 12 sets. Previously we would have been doing 8 exercises and a total of 15 sets. So we've actually removed my squatting pattern, which was the hack squat. We've removed the hip thrust, and we've also removed the walk and lunge. So that's quite a lot of exercises to remove from a session. However, where we have removed some volume, we've added additional sets back into the exercises I am doing. So the rationale behind this is that there's 3 reasons. Reason number 1 is during my last prep, my legs were the muscle group that faded more so than any other body part. And the reason for that being was I was likely doing far too much volume than I could actually recover from. So this time around, we've made sure to bring the volume down a little bit and just not do as much on the legs. So reason number 2 is that we actually just need way less volume to hold on to tissue than we do to build tissue in the first place. So ideally you want to be doing the bare minimum when it comes to your training in the gym when you are on prep to hold on to the muscle. Last time around, I definitely overdid it, and I found that a lot of the sets I was doing, I was just trying to hold on to numbers, right? I was chasing the logbook load from the last time, and what would happen was I'd do a set of 8 reps, right? That would fall back to 6 reps. Then I'd try and get those 2 reps back the next session, and then I'd just keep losing reps off my logbook, okay? So we're just gonna reduce the ego this time around and just be a little bit more smart with what we're doing. And the reason number 3 is gonna be doing less exercises is just gonna be far less fatiguing. Especially for me, I train alone, right? So when you're doing legs, you're loading all the legs onto the leg press, you're bringing a bar and a bench and putting all the plates on when you're doing hip thrust, and I'm dragging dumbbells across the gym to do walk and lunges, right? Now, without sounding like too much of a pussy, that does accumulate a lot of fatigue, right? And in my off season, I was smashed after my leg days doing that on my own. So when we have less exercises, it's less time spent in the gym, it's less time set up, it's less time faffing about in between exercises. So it just allows for the work that we are doing to be that little bit more productive. All right, guys, so before we get into legs, we're gonna start off this session with 4 sets of a bicep curl, okay? So during the entirety of my off season, I was doing arms, top up arm work at the beginning of my leg days, and it worked really well to bring my arms up. Now we did actually have to drop the tricep volume out just because my triceps weren't recovered enough going into push 2 days later, and I found I was losing some numbers off my presses. But we've kept the bicep work in there, as generally for me, my biceps recover a lot better than my triceps. So we've done an extra set here. Instead of doing 3 sets of biceps to triceps, 4 sets of biceps at the start of this leg day. So I'm going to use this prime bar here with these black D handles as it just feels the best for me, right, when it comes to my biceps. I'm not super stiff in coming up. I can kind of rotate my wrists a little bit as I come up, get a little bit more of a contraction. So this is always my preference when it comes to arm work. So normally when I do biceps at the end of my pull day, I can just jump straight in, no kissing, right? And get stuck into it straight away, because my biceps are already full of blood after doing all the tugs from that session. Whereas doing some top up work at the start of legs, I find I'm just really cold, right? So what I like to do with my 4 sets here is I'll do a couple of warm-ups, right? I'll ease myself into it, a little bit of foreplay, not straight in, no kissing. And then for my first set, I'll actually go with a slightly lighter set and I'll do more reps, right? And then once I feel like I've got a really good pump, I've filled my biceps with a little bit of blood, then after that I'll do 3 heavier sets. So that'll just be your conventional like heavy top set, and then you kind of pyramid down as you go along. So it's just the way I like to do it when I'm really cold at the start of a session. A little bit of a difference there between like training your arms at the end of a session versus start of your session. They do take a little bit more time to warm up, in my opinion, if you want to feel like you're getting a good connection. So 16 reps there, nice and light. Didn't actually take that one the whole way to failure. So now I'll go a little bit heavier and then 3 sets to failure after this. Alright, so the boring stuff is out of the way right now. Arms have been done. Thank God. I always hate doing those at the start of my leg day because I feel like it just doesn't really get me in the zone for legs that much. But it's better to do it at the start of leg day than the end of leg day because it's going to be very unproductive if you try and train your arms after legs, in my opinion anyway. So I like the top up work at the start of leg day. But we're moving on to this prime plate loaded leg extension now. So the goal here is to do all 3 sets with the exact same loading, but just change the resistance profiles as we move along, okay? So with a leg extension, your ability to get your quad short is going to be strongest at the very beginning of the session. So that's why we train the leg extensions first. And with the loading on this, we want to load a mid to shortened range, for the most part, half lengthened, half mid shortened at the beginning, and then just slowly add the weight up towards the top in the lengthened range, just so we can kind of hit the same amount of reps with the same weight, but just kind of matching the strength curve of the muscle with the resistance profile of the machine. Now a quick caveat here before we get into this leg day, and before I have some 18-year-old kid in my comments who's read a couple of studies, not even read a couple of studies, seen a couple of studies on Instagram, or he's watched a couple of Jeff Nippard videos. This is the way I train legs. These are my opinions. This is what I've found has worked well for me over the last 11 years of training. Now, there's many different methods and ways to train your legs, and all methods work, okay? But whatever method you find works best for you, you stick to. Now, you can train whatever way you like, or however the studies tell you to train. But before you comment on my posts, show me your legs. Enough said. I see you, Benjamin. I know you're out there with your skinny fucking legs. Not going to do a ton of warm-up reps here. Literally just as many as I feel I need to get my knees nice and warm and just get a tiny bit of blood in my quads. So I know a lot of people, when they do leg extensions or like any other leg exercises, they kind of take a lot of time to warm up and they do a lot of reps, but I'll always try and do the least amount of reps I possibly can for me to feel ready for that exercise. And when it comes to legs, I always try and do as little as possible, if I'm honest. So this feels pretty good today. So I'm going to go with a load progression. I'm going to add 5 kilos onto the top peg and the middle peg. So my rep range here is supposed to be 10 to 12 reps, but I actually worked this up to 14 reps the previous session, and it feels a lot better today than it did the previous session. So that's kind of my justification for taking the load progression, right? Because I'll always try and land between that 12 to 15 rep range, but I know based off my warm-ups and how good this is feeling today, if I use the weight I did from last week, I'll probably get to that 15 reps easily enough, right? So in my mind, as I'm warming up, I'm feeling things out, right? And I'm trying to gauge where that top set weight is going to land. How many reps am I going to get, do I reckon? Based off how I felt in my last workout, and also based off the weight that I lifted for the amount of reps I lifted in my last workout. So sometimes you don't always have to go by your logbook and like step-by-step rep and weight when the load progression tells you to take a load progression. You will sometimes know yourself as you're warming up whether something feels good or not, and on the days where it feels good, go for it, take that load progression. Now some people probably tell you it's overkill to use wraps on a leg extension to strap yourself in, but from my perspective, anything that is going to allow me to be more stable and therefore generate more force on any exercise, I'm going to utilize. Now, it doesn't mean you need to take the piss with it and like, you know, strap yourself into a chest press, for example. But on a leg extension, one of the common issues I see as people are approaching the end of a set, let's say, and the weight starts to get too heavy, is they'll start to kick the weight and their hips will start to shift up off the pad, right? So when you're doing any sort of extension or curl, you always want to have your glutes into the seat as much as you possibly can, right? So I will strap myself in, I will pull myself in, and towards the end of the set, when that weight wants to pop me up, I'm not going to be budging because I'll strap myself in. So 10 kg up there, 1 rep down, not too bad. So now the goal is to stick with this 120 kilos, change the loading and try and aim to get 13 reps across all sets. Now, this is the aim, right? This doesn't always happen perfectly. Some weeks it might, some weeks it might not, dependent on how quickly I'm fatiguing as the sets go on. But that's just the aim and what we're trying to achieve here. Oh. 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 Fuck. I think these leg days that I'm doing now, I'm definitely still adjusting to having 3 sets or even 4 on some of these exercises. So previously when it came to quad work, it'd always be 2 sets per exercise. And I think mentally, it's a little bit easier to switch on for those 2 sets, right? But now having 3 sets, it's very hard to keep that same mental focus on all of the sets, right? It almost feels like the exercise isn't fresh anymore. You've already done 2 hard sets to failure. You're like, oh fuck, I've got another one to do, you know? I don't know how I used to do 3 or 4 sets of 10 reps on every single exercise back in the day. I just wasn't training to failure, you know? Whereas now with the way I train, it's a lot for me to do 3 or 4 sets on an exercise, believe it or not. So something I'm still getting used to with this new setup. But the only thing that kind of helps me to get through it and push towards the end of the session is knowing that I've got half the exercises I did before, right? So anytime I get onto the 3rd set and I'm like, fuck, another set here, I'm like, well, I'm basically nearly done my session, so just stop being a pussy and crack on pretty much. Oh. Oh. Oh, fuck. Whew. Flopped a little bit on that set now. I was 2 reps under the previous 2 sets. So maybe went into that, rushed into that a little bit too quickly. But maybe I'm just getting a little bit preppy because I trained pull yesterday and I have 3 sets on most exercises on that day. And I definitely noticed my endurance starting to flag a little bit on those 3rd sets. So maybe potentially soon we might have to take a look at the volume we're already doing, as even though this has been adjusted downwards, it might need to go down even further as prep goes on. And as prep goes on, you probably should be bringing your training volume down anyway, because you're not going to be able to do the same amount of training volume you do in your off season. And calories are super high and your recovery capacity is, let's be real, through the roof, right? In prep it's just not going to be the same. So you have to train smarter, not harder, to a certain degree when you're on prep. And I definitely learned that lesson last prep with how much my legs shrank. So I'm not making that mistake this time. Touch wood, hopefully I haven't jinxed it and my legs still stay around by the time I get on stage. So I was just talking to Joe off camera there about doing the bare minimum when it comes to your training to try and retain your tissue, right? And in the off season, I used to come in here for my leg days and I would absolutely bury myself, okay? My leg days were no joke. And obviously it worked because my legs are arguably, well no, they are the most improved body part on my whole physique this off season. So it obviously worked, but I could not come in and do what I did in the off season now in prep because I just wouldn't be able to recover from it. Even in off season, I used to get home, honestly, and on my rest day after legs, I'd be like a fucking vegetable on the couch all day. And even going into push 2 days later, I would still actually feel some of that central nervous system fatigue. So that's another very important thing to realize with your training, guys, is that it's not just that session itself. Like, it's not just the leg day itself, or even your recovery from leg day to leg day. It's also your whole entire rotation, your whole entire training rotation that you have to take into consideration. Because if you're absolutely fucking smashed after a leg day, and you're carrying that fatigue into push, that's indirectly going to affect your push day as well. And you might not even realize that. So that's something that I'm going to try and manage very carefully and very closely this prep, obviously with Kuba, and touching base with them and giving them feedback. But I think he knows anyway what he needs to do to manage me in prep, because when he took away my hip thrust and my walk and lunge from this day, I was raging, right? I was snapping. I was like, please just add one set of hip thrust back in, because that's like one of my favorite exercises. But he just went, no, like just flat out no. And I was like, how am I going to come in for a leg day and do 4 exercises? That's fucking boring, like that's fucking shit. But then it just like switched in my head. What do I want more? To just enjoy my leg days on prep, or to actually have good legs on stage? I want to have good legs on stage, right? So obviously as bodybuilders, we bodybuild because we love training, right? But competing, a lot of things change, right? You're not going to love everything you do as part of the competing process and getting on stage. And arguably, in the last couple of weeks of competition prep, training fucking sucks balls, okay? Joe's nodding his head here because he knows he's done a competition prep, okay? It's not fun whatsoever. But you just got to do what you need to do to bring the look that you want on stage. And that is what's important in that period of time. So I have to just recalibrate my mindset a little bit and let go of some of the emotional attachments I have to doing certain movements or the way I want certain sessions set up. And I just got to do what I need to do very smartly and very rationally this prep to make sure I bring the best look, because I wasn't happy with my look on stage last time, especially my legs. So it's all about evolving as a bodybuilder, guys, learning the lessons that I needed to learn from my previous prep. So always keeping those thoughts and those mistakes in the back of my mind in everything that I do. So we have got 4 sets here, guys. First 2 sets are going to be in the kind of mid-lengthened range, and the last 2 sets then are going to be fully in the lengthened range on this prime pin-loaded machine. So basically that just means it's going to be heaviest up at the stretch at the very top here, when my legs are completely straight, and it gets lighter as my ankles start to pull back in towards my hamstrings. So 4 sets on this is pretty brutal. I'm not gonna lie, it's unforgiving. Even after like 2 sets, my hamstrings are absolutely smoked. So by the time I get to that 4th set, they're just completely trashed. But I like it though. I like the feeling of a good hamstring pump. It's painful, but it's satisfying. So first top set here. Let's get it. Boom. Boom. Handsome bastard, aren't I? It was actually good timing today with the haircut. Normally it gets booked in after the video is booked in, but it's good timing this time. So fresh for once and not looking homeless. Down on those first 2 sets now. Down 1 rep and down 2 reps. So I was going to drop back on load for the last 2 sets, but I got 15 last week, which is the top of my rep range on both sets. So I'm not sure whether to just go an extra 5 pounds and just try and aim for 10 to 12, or just stick with the weight I done last week. But we'll see. I'll decide now in a minute, but I'll give myself a good bit of rest before I head into these last 2 sets, because hamstrings are pumped now. And I definitely don't feel that strong today, which is weird because quads feel good. But I think I was able to get more productive work done with my hamstrings when I did my training session back home rather than my quads. So I took the progression there. 5 pounds up, 12 reps. That was actually a good set. So felt a little bit better there actually on set 3 than I did on set 5. I thought I might kind of drop off there a little bit, but I didn't. So I think hamstring's obviously just a little bit stronger now in the lengthened position. So maybe I might change that there to 1 set on set 5 and 3 on set 3. I don't know. I'll see how it feels next week. Right guys, we're just waiting on the leg press now. So good sets on the hamstring curl there. All of them above 12 reps as well. I'm sure I've probably mentioned before on this channel, but I just run over it again in this video. For me, when I'm training legs, I try and keep everything above 12 reps. Now, my rationale behind this and my thought process behind this is that after going through multiple different off seasons, right, and always having a slightly lower rep, heavier top set, and then a slightly higher rep back off set, I always found that I just got a lot more from the back off set, okay? I always felt a lot better stimulus through my legs, and my quads in particular, from higher rep ranges. And that kind of holds true for the majority of leg exercises I do in the gym, calves, glutes, the whole shebang, right? I just prefer higher rep ranges. And I found that with the kind of 8-10 reppers, I get into the habit of chasing load a little bit too much. And I might end up taking a 6 repper or a 7 repper some weeks when I be trying to get that load progression and really just chase the ego and chase the load on the bar, right? And what that'd lead to was just my knees getting absolutely barred, my lower back getting absolutely barred, to the point where I'd actually have to reset the load and really scale back for a couple of weeks, building back up just to let my knees recover, right? So it kind of got to this vicious cycle where I'd make a lot of progress, yes, but then I'd hit a little bit of a wall and a sticking point, have to pull back on my numbers and have to build back up and just recover my knees, right? So about a year ago I decided, right, I'm going to scrap that, I'm going to keep all my rep ranges above 12 reps. And ever since, my knees have felt brand new. I've had no issues with them whatsoever. Now I have picked up 1 or 2 slight niggly injuries, but that's not related to the reps that I'm doing, right? So you'll see here now in the leg press, both sets are going to be, all 3 sets are going to be in that 12 to 15 rep range. And it's just what works the best for me, right? And I've seen massive growth in my legs, like I've said this year. And I think that's not all down to just the rep ranges and above 12 being magic. I think it's down to my ability to actually stay fresh and get good productive work done for longer. So some people might tolerate, you know, these 8-10 reppers just fine, and their knees might hold up and their connective tissue might hold up a little bit better than mine. But unfortunately for me, that's not the case. So just how I like to approach things, guys. And if you find your knees getting a little bit battered as well, maybe try it for yourself and see how you get on. So guys, I mentioned earlier in the video that I had to remove my squat pattern from this leg day. So I was getting a little bit of tightness running down my right vastus medialis there, from just below my knee the whole way up my leg. And anytime I was getting a lot of knee flexion, I was feeling it's bending almost like an elastic band in my quad for the longest time. And after I injured my pec, I decided, right, I better stop pushing through this now, and I better actually listen to it and try and adjust a couple of things. So the hack squat was the main culprit, but also on the leg press, if I got too much knee flexion, it would kind of twinge it a little bit. So I decided to change my stance on this leg press. So instead of going a little bit lower with the heels and a little bit more inwards with the feet to try and get as much knee flexion as possible, I'm now going a little bit higher and wider with my stance. So a little bit more of a hip dominant stance, and as I come down, I'm going to get a lot more kind of glute and adductor out of it here. I'll still get a hell of a lot of quad, don't get me wrong, because it is a leg press, but it's going to be a little bit more biased towards the glutes and the hamstrings. And this will kind of leave my leg not as like, more at a right angle, right? And not as kind of bent and with not as much knee flexion as I would have had before. So this has been way comfier for me over the last couple of weeks. Now I did have to scale back on the load quite a bit just to give my glutes and adductors time to kind of acclimatise to that, and I've been slowly kind of building back up. So I'm about half a plate away from where I was before for the same amount of reps. So we're not going to rush into it today. We'll take lots of warm-ups. So the leg press is probably the one exercise that you will see me do quite a lot of warm-ups on. I normally don't do too many reps, but I will do quite a lot of sets. So I'm just leaving 2 plates on here. Normally I'll do the sled beforehand, but I'll probably do 2 plates, and then 4 plates, and then I'll do 5 plates, and then I'll do 6 plates, and then I'll do 6.5 for my top set. So I will build up nice and slowly. And for me, the main reason is just to kind of get into the rhythm of the movement, right? Bigger compound movements like this, I like to get into the rhythm with them. I think my breathing, my bracing, my tempo, it kind of takes a couple of reps and a couple of warm-up sets for me to really nail that down before I feel mentally and almost like neurologically ready to go into that top set. So we'll do a couple of warm-ups here and we'll catch back up to you for the top set. Chair needed for the rest in between sets here. Stay off my feet a little bit. Whew, I can definitely feel my ability to break through that sticking point at the end of the set starting to diminish a little bit. So match reps on that set there, which I'm not too pleased about, but it is what it is. Hopefully I'll be able to get a rep up on the next 2 sets. What you will have noticed on that set, the leg press there, is that my eccentrics are quite slow, right? And it's not necessarily about having the slowest eccentric or trying to have the slowest eccentric. It's about being able to control the weight on the way down. Now, for me, it takes me about 4 seconds to come down the eccentric, but that's how long it takes for me to feel like I have full control over the weight on the way down. For you, that might be 3 seconds. For me, it's in around 4 seconds. So I always want to feel like I'm in control of that weight, because that weight is coming down on top of me, okay? And when you're doing a leg press or a hack squat or any other leg movement of this nature, you want to be able to change direction nice and smoothly, okay? You don't want to come down and have to bounce out of the hole and use a lot of counter force to get that weight back up, because the quicker the weight comes down, the more force you're going to have to reduce to bring that load back up again, right? And that's going to transfer a lot of the tension onto your connective joints, your tendons, etc., and just batter the fuck out your knees. And I know this because I've been there and I've done it all before, right? Years ago, when I used to squat quite a lot, I used to just drop down into the hole and slingshot back up as quickly as I possibly could, thinking that it would allow me to lift more weight or more reps. And it didn't. Well, it might have allowed me to do more reps, but was I really getting a stimulus out of the muscle that way? No, I wasn't, because I couldn't even walk up a flight of stairs without my legs going from underneath me, because the tendonitis in my knees was so fucking bad, right? So you want to make sure, no matter what you do, that you have control over the weight doesn't have control over you. If you're doing a leg press and you're 1 second on the way down on the concentric, I'd argue that that weight is controlling you, or you're not controlling that weight, okay? So if you have battered knees, then maybe assess your control over the change of direction in particular and try and really work on that, because that is absolute key to staying healthy and we all want to do this for as long as possible, right? Well, I know I do. So I'll always try and train the smartest way I possibly can to have my body not be as beat up as possible so I can train for as long as possible, you know? So another thing you'll notice when I'm doing my sets here is going to be my breathing and my bracing, which is arguably extremely underrated and undervalued and underutilized by a lot of people, right? So what I'll do on the way down is I will actually breathe in and then brace just before I get to the bottom. Rather than breathing in at the very top, holding that breath, and then by the time I get down to the bottom, completely gassing out, and then having to blow out all that air and lose my brace, just when it matters the most, which is the change of direction at the bottom, okay? Taking a big breath and holding in that brace at the top of a rep, it's fine if you're a powerlifter and you're in a 1 rep max squat, but when you're doing 12 plus reps on a leg press, it doesn't really make that much sense, okay? So doing lots of reps with tremendous control, nice slow eccentrics, pauses at the bottom, that takes a hell of a lot of endurance. So if you're breathing in at the top and holding your breath on the whole way down, you're going to gas out extremely quickly. And I'll very commonly see this in a lot of people, especially with my clients in execution clips, where they breathe in at the top, and as they come down to the bottom, the second they change direction and they press their legs up, they let go of that air straight away. So the whole purpose of bracing in the first place, you're just eliminating that by letting go of all that air at the bottom, okay? That's when you want to brace the most. You want to be braced, you want to be tight as you're coming up out of the hole, not when you're on the way down. Because when you're on the way down, if you're on a hack squat, for example, or a squat, or even on a leg press, you're already kind of braced, okay? It's only at that change of inertia, that change of force, that you actually want to be pushing up with a nice tight brace. So it almost takes a lot of practice to get the rhythm with your breathing and your bracing, right? So as I come up, once I get through that sticking point, I'll start to breathe out, but I'll also continue to breathe out almost when I start to come back down again. And when I'm halfway down, just before I get into the hole, I breathe in, I hold that brace, and then I'm nice and tight for when I want to push that way up to the top. Hopefully I didn't butcher that explanation. Oh. 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 It's tiring stuff. This high rep leg press. That's not even high rep really. It's 12 reps, but I do quite like a 15 to 20 on the leg press. Haven't done it in quite some time, but that really puts hairs in your chest, that does. And all high rep leg work, to be honest. Whereas when it comes to legs, the mind always goes before the body. So when you hit failure, when you're training chest, you know you've hit failure, right? Because you can't move the weight up anymore. But hitting failure on legs is very different. A lot of people will stop when they start to feel that burn, when their quads start to scream out at them. But that's just when the set starts. That's when you got to push through. No pain, no gain, as they say. So when those legs start to burn, honestly, you're only like halfway through your set. You've got a lot more left in you than you actually realize. So it's useful to train with someone who actually trains hard, or train with a spotter who can spot you on something like a leg press or a hack squat, so that you can literally keep going and going and going until your legs can't move the weight anymore. Because oftentimes it's going to be your mind that tells you to stop, right? Not your legs. Very, very different. That's why a lot of people have small legs, because they don't want to push through that pain. It's a good kind of pain though. It's a love-hate relationship I have with it. When your legs are like this, like literally just at the right angle, you can actually feel the blood fill up. I have to actually straighten my legs like this to get some relief when my legs are like proper pumped. I have to stop doing the calf raise upstairs. It's like a calf raise where like you're on the pad here, see a calf raise. I had to stop using it on this day, because after this leg press, when I go up and that's like pressed on my thighs, the pump in my quads, not my calves, is literally excruciating. So I actually can't do it. So I had to just sub it out for the standard toe press. Weird, but that's how you know. That's how you know you've done some good sets. Right guys, Tip for training calves: don't skip them, actually train them, okay? And treat them the exact same as you treat all your other muscle groups. You still need to train them to failure, you still need to train them hard if you want them to grow. Now, obviously, even if you train them quite a lot, they still might grow not that much. They are calves at the end of the day, they are largely genetic. However, if you are a bodybuilder, then you need to obviously try and grow everything. So with calves, rule of thumb, if it doesn't feel like your calves are about to fill up with battery acid, you're nowhere near failure, okay? Calves are one of the most painful muscle groups to train, in my opinion. When you get a proper pump through your calves and you're actually training the whole way to failure, they hurt like a motherfucker, honest to God. You can barely walk after them. So just make sure if you are doing calves, especially towards the end of your session, don't half-ass them, still train to failure. And I think don't go too heavy on them either. You need to be able to go light. You need to be able to get good range of motion, nice pause in the stretch, nice good contraction at the top. Same as training any other small muscle group. Like you always hear me talk about rear delts, side delts, biceps, triceps. I approach calves in the exact same manner. Higher reps, higher volume, burn the fuck out of them. Now, getting towards the end of the session and I don't feel too fucked. Like, obviously I feel like I've had a tough session, right? But nowhere near as obliterated as I'd normally be if this was an off-season leg day. So I'll be able to get home tonight, rest, recover, and tomorrow I shouldn't feel absolutely fucking mangled, like I can't even get up off the couch. So prep has been going really well so far. I forgot to actually even mention prep during this video. So we're 14 weeks out tomorrow from the Two Bros Glasgow show. So things are shaping up quite nicely. I haven't actually dropped that much weight. In 6 weeks, I'm down like 4 kilos. Actually, 3.8 because my weight went back up this morning. So I had a couple of high days, as you would have seen in the last video when I was back home. And since then, my body weight has actually been coming up steadily as the week has gone on. So I thought Cuban might put my food in this morning's check-in, but he didn't. So we'll see if I get a slight drop tomorrow, but I kind of want to crack on a little bit at this stage. 6 weeks of food still being the same, and honestly, my appetite still being like, you know, grand. I'm kind of ready to crack on now, and I really just want to kind of get peeled. Now, I might regret that in a couple of weeks when I'm absolutely skinned and I'm hanging, but it feels very different to the last prep so far. And I mean, it's flying by because it was 24 weeks, 23 weeks until my first show. The last time around, it'll be 20 weeks until the first show this time around. But the first 6 weeks have definitely gone a lot quicker than they did the last time. So it feels quite strange to be 14 weeks out because, you know, I still feel like I haven't even really started prep. And I think last time around, I kind of felt like I was on prep when I was like 12 weeks out-ish. And I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. I think it's going to be a lot further down along the line until I kind of start feeling that way. So shaping up well so far. I'm happy with the size I'm managing to hold where my condition is at. So I think I may potentially be a little bit heavier than I originally anticipated, which wouldn't be a bad thing, but look, we don't want to speak too soon. Don't want to big myself up too much. So we'll have to wait and see. So one thing to actually mention when doing calves here is to keep your knees locked, okay? We don't want to see the knees bending as you're doing a calf raise, right? Get yourself into position with the ball of your foot on the platform, and from there as you come up, I shouldn't see this, okay? See this softening of the knees like this, where the knees soften and then they kind of lock out? If you do that, you're just going to be using a little bit of a quad. It's almost the equivalent to hitching on a deadlift in a way, okay? Keep those knees down, keep them locked, And from there, all you're thinking about, pressing up through the ball of your foot and actually using your calf muscle. Oh, fucking good. Job done. Wrapped up. Quick leg day. I still feel like I should be doing more, but that was enough. The goal is get in, get out, stimulate, not annihilate, get home, rest, recover, and hold on to these legs this time around. Right guys, that is a wrap on legs. We'll be back again for another video in a couple of weeks time, and whatever session that is, whatever way it lands, it'll just land how it lands. So thank you very much for watching guys. If you've made it this far, don't forget to like the video and also subscribe if you haven't already. There is still 50% of you who watch the videos who aren't subscribed, so make sure to subscribe and make sure you keep up to date with the next couple of weeks as we start to approach prep and things start to get a little bit more serious and a little bit more freaky in terms of the physique and the condition. No physique update for you today, you just get to see the lower body, but when we're in for an upper body session the next time, then we'll do a little bit of a rig update, because I might be potentially like 12-ish, maybe 12 to 10 weeks out at that stage, so should be looking pretty decent. So guys, I will catch you in the next one. Take care.